The Olympics has a long history, from Emperor Nero rigging the games so he could keep all the medals, to its resurgence in 1896, which united the world for a brief time before it tore itself apart in World War I. But I think we can all agree that one of the most inspirational and uplifting stories to come from these games is that of James Cleveland Jesse Owens from Oakville, Alabama, who won 4 gold medals in a championship that was being exploited by Nazi Germany to promote their hateful government and ideals. We want to think that this was a happy story, in a world where segregation was rife and the civil rights movement was still a good couple of decades away. I'm sorry to say that history is never that kind. Though Jesse Owens deserved every ounce of glory he gained, the Nazis in Europe and the Jim Crow laws in America didn't want to acknowledge it. Nevertheless, Owens is one of the most significant athletes ever to compete in the Olympic Games. He is up there with Usain Bolt, Jackie Robinson, Muhammad Ali, and even Simone Biles, and he deserves to have his story immortalised. Jesse Owens was born on 12th of September 1913 in Oakville, Alabama. He was the youngest of 10 children and the grandson of slaves. He was originally known as JC until he and his family moved north in the Great Migration. At his new school, his teacher misheard his nickname as Jesse, and that was how he was known from then on. During his childhood, he worked in a variety of jobs. In Alabama, he picked cotton with his parents. He also delivered groceries and worked in shoe repair. When he was 5, he discovered a large lump on his chest that was pressing into his lungs. It might have been a tumour that would have killed him before he turned 6, as the family didn't have the money to treat him. His mother took initiative and surgically removed the lump herself. Young Jesse managed to pull through, and it seemed the worst was over. Jesse was enthusiastic about running. He joined the track team at East Technical High School. At the National High School Championship, he ran 100 yards in 9.4 seconds, which was equal to the then world record, and achieved an impressive 7.56 metre distance in the long jump. He managed to attend the University of Ohio, the first of his family to go to college, and he joined the track team there as well, being coached by former athlete Larry Snyder. The campus was still segregated, so Jesse had to live off campus and did a lot of menial jobs to support himself and his family back home. Owens came to national fame on 25th of May 1935, also known as the Day of Days. At the Big Ten meet at Ferry Field in Ann Arbor, Michigan, he established 4 world records in the long jump, and the 220-yard sprint, and the 100-yard dash, and the 220-yard low hurdles. This would be impressive enough, but he had also injured his back just a few days prior, and yet he was still able to excel. Snyder allowed him to run the 100 and see how he felt afterwards, but Owens persevered. At all events he went to, however, Owens was made to stay in black-only hotels and eat in black-only restaurants. After his success, Owens married his high school sweetheart, Minnie Ruth Solomon, with whom he had already had a daughter named Gloria. They were married in July of 1935 and stayed together until Owens' death in 1980. They had 2 more daughters named Marlene, who was born in 1937, and Beverly, born in 1940. When Berlin won the bid to host the Summer Olympics for 1936, back in April of 1931, it seemed that Germany was bouncing back from their economic struggles and their tarnished reputation since the end of the First World War. However, we all know who came to power in 1933, right? The Third Reich wasted no time in oppressing vast groups of people who didn't match their ideology, attacking Jews, people of colour, the disabled, Romani, just to name a few. With their views towards non-Aryans being not so secret in the rest of the world, the United States were forced to debate on whether they would boycott the Games in protest against the Reich's policies. Plans were going ahead to host a counter Games in Spain, but the outbreak of the Spanish Civil War put an end to this plan. With the United States being the largest power in the world, other nations were looking to them to follow suit. If they boycotted, several other nations may do the same. But America would not allow Germany to practically take all the medals. By a narrow margin, the US Olympic Committee voted that they would go ahead with the Games. In exchange, the Germans would halt their oppressive regime and cover up their hateful propaganda. Owens had qualified for the Olympics, but this did not please a number of African Americans. Walter Francis White, Secretary of the National Association for the Advancement of Coloured People, planned to dissuade Owens from taking part, but never sent the planned letter. To them, it would be hypocrisy to oppose one racist regime while promoting another. The NAACP protested the Games, demanding a boycott, and Owens agreed that if there are minorities in Germany who are being discriminated against, the United States should withdraw from the 1936 Olympics. However, when the Olympic Committee's presidents, Avery Brundage, branded those in favour of boycotting as un-American agitators, Owens and his fellow black athletes decided to take part. When Owens arrived in Germany, he was surprised to find a large number of fans waiting for him. He became the first African American to receive sponsorship when Adi Dassler persuaded him to wear the shoes his company made. This company would later go on to become Adidas. For the first time in Jesse's life, he didn't have to face segregation, as the Olympic Village allowed whole teams to room together regardless of skin colour. We all know that Owens managed to win 4 gold medals, which was every event he competed in. He won the long jump thanks to Lutz Long, who was the German athlete in the same event, by advising Owens on how to approach his jump, namely placing a towel before the limit line so he will jump at the towel and not worry about going over the line and getting disqualified. After Owens won the gold medal, he and Lutz Long were then seen walking arm in arm around the Olympic Stadium. Long and Owens remained friends after the Olympics and regularly kept in contact until Long was killed in World War II. Owens was meant to only compete in 3 events, but when Avery Brundage compromised with the Reich not to let 2 Jewish athletes compete, Owens was brought in to replace them and managed to win his 4th gold medal. It was pretty much 1 step forward, 2 steps back where the Reich was concerned. We heard the story that when Owens won his medals, a certain man with a toothbrush moustache left the stadium to avoid shaking hands with him. This sounds perfectly in character for the Führer, but it isn't actually true. Owens himself claimed that Hitler was not at the stadium for the entirety of the Games, but he did see him wave at Owens when he passed his box. In October of 1936, Owens asserted that it wasn't Hitler who snubbed him. Franklin D. Roosevelt snubbed him. Nonetheless, Owens' success in the Games was a slap in the face to the Aryan ideals of the Third Reich. Owens was the exact opposite of what they were trying to promote, and it proved to the world that their ideology was flawed. Despite his landmark success at the Olympic Games, this would be the height of Owens' achievements. Following the end of the Games, Avery Brundage dragged the American Olympic team into further European competitions. Owens claimed he never made any money out of it, and the constant strain made him lose weight. Fed up, Owens refused to compete in any more races and returned to the United States in August. He received a parade in New York to celebrate his victory, but when he arrived at the Waldorf Astoria for a dinner held in his honour, he was barred from entering through the main doors, and he had to enter the building through a freight elevator. While all the white American athletic champions were invited to the White House to meet the president, Jesse Owens never received an invitation. In retribution for abandoning the European tour, Avery Brundage and the Olympic Committee stripped Owens of his amateur athlete status and barred him from competing in further competitions. As a result, Owens was forced to once again take menial jobs to support his family, and whenever he did race, it was practically a commodity, where he sprinted against horses. Jesse Owens' financial struggles lasted long after the Olympics. 30 years after his success, he was bankrupt and convicted for tax evasion. When African-American sprinters Tommy Smith and John Carlos did a Black Power salute in the 1968 Olympics, Owens initially opposed the symbol as meaningless, but later asserted in his 1972 book, I Have Changed, that any black man who wasn't a militant in 1970 was either blind or a coward. Owens would appear at several Olympic events throughout his life and didn't approve of the United States' decision to boycott the 1980 Games, owing to the Soviet Union's invasion of Afghanistan. But he would not live to see the Games take place, with or without America. Jesse Owens died on the 31st of March 1980 of lung cancer, which was resistant to any kind of drug. He was surrounded by his family, aged only 66. He is now buried in Oakwood Cemetery in Chicago, Illinois. Jimmy Carter paid tribute to Owens, declaring, "Perhaps no athlete better symbolized the human struggle against tyranny, poverty, and racial bigotry." George H.W. Bush granted him the Congressional Medal Award. In his birthplace of Oakville, Alabama, there now sits the Jesse Owens Memorial Park and Museum. He has a statue in Cleveland, Ohio, and the university named their running track after him. And that's just a handful of the honours he received. Aside from documentaries, Jesse Owens only has 2 on-screen counterparts to his name, despite his achievements. The first is a television film from 1984, the Jesse Owens story, which is told through flashback. It's tasteful, I'll give it that, but I do feel as though I'm watching it through a vanilla lens, trying not to offend anyone. The other incarnation is a 2016 movie by Stephen Hopkins called Race. Stephen James' performance as Jesse Owens is pretty good, and it is one of the highlights of the film, along with the friendship established between him and Lutz Long. And it is satisfying to see the two Jewish athletes on the American team go up to a couple of Nazi soldiers and brandish their Star of David medallions at them. So when they're not allowed to compete, you rightly feel sorry for them. The bad stuff mainly comes from the rewriting of the racist and right-wing Avery Brundage as a defendant of equal rights. Remember, Avery Brundage in real life was so problematic to the Olympic Committee that his honours have been removed from the Hall of Fame. So while you're trying to enjoy this movie, all it does is make you want to take a long shower afterwards. And that's not even touching how they rewrote Leni Riefenstahl. To sum up the movie, let me put it this way. Have you seen literally any sports movie ever? Then you've seen Race, and you don't have to watch it. Another smaller on-screen incarnation is the BBC show Horrible Histories. In a song to promote the 2012 Olympics based on the Fame song, the cast sings from the most significant events of Olympic history. Jesse Owens appears in the final verse to summarise his achievements, played by Giles Terrera.
Flame, it's gonna burn forever. Olympics are never in doubt. Flame.
And that's it for Jesse Owens. I hope you're enjoying this so far. Next time we're staying in America and we're looking at a famous actress from Hollywood who was the first African American to ever win an Academy Award, and her name is Hattie McDaniel. I hope you're looking forward to it, and if you want to make sure you stay updated on the future videos coming out this month and for the rest of this channel's life, however long it may be, please make sure you subscribe and leave a like to make sure that this video does not get buried. Okay, we're keeping on.